She stood at the altar, tears streaming down her face, looking at the man who had once destroyed her entire world. The same man who took everything from her. The same man who, through a cruel twist of fate, she had fallen desperately in love with. But how did they get here? How did two people from opposite worlds, bound by hatred and a reckless bet, end up standing before God, promising forever? This is not just a love story. This is a story about pain. About revenge. About the power of transformation. And about how sometimes, the people who hurt us the most become the ones who teach us how to love again. Let me take you back to where it all began. Chidi Okonkwo was not just wealthy. He was the kind of wealthy that made other wealthy people feel poor. At 35 years old, he had built an empire from the ground up. His name was whispered in boardrooms across Lagos, across Africa, across the world. When Chidi walked into a room, people stopped talking. When Chidi made a decision, markets shifted. When Chidi wanted something, he got it. Always. Without exception. He had learned early in life that the world belonged to those who took it. And Chidi was a taker. He took companies. He took opportunities. He took whatever he wanted, whenever he wanted it, and he never, not once, looked back to see the destruction he left in his wake. On this particular night, Chidi stood in the middle of one of the most exclusive parties Lagos had ever seen. The venue was breathtaking. Crystal chandeliers hung from ceilings so high they seemed to touch the heavens. Women in designer gowns floated across marble floors. Men in tailored suits exchanged business cards worth millions. And in the center of it all, with a glass of the finest champagne in his hand, stood Chidi Okonkwo. His best friend, Emeka, approached him with that familiar mischievous smile. The one that always meant trouble. "You look bored," Emeka said, clinking his glass against Chidi's. Chidi shrugged. "These parties are all the same. Same faces. Same conversations. Same desperate women trying to catch my attention." Emeka laughed. "That's because you've conquered everything, my friend. There's nothing left to challenge you." Something flickered in Chidi's eyes. Challenge. That word was like oxygen to him. He lived for challenges. He breathed for the thrill of competition. Without a challenge, life felt meaningless. "What are you suggesting?" Chidi asked, his interest suddenly piqued. Emeka leaned in closer, lowering his voice. "I have a bet for you. One I don't think you have the courage to take." Chidi's eyebrow shot up. "Courage? You dare question my courage?" "I dare," Emeka said, grinning. "Here's the bet. I challenge you to marry a woman who doesn't fit your usual type. Not one of these glamorous women who throw themselves at your feet. I'm talking about someone different. Someone ordinary. Someone who won't be impressed by your money or your power." Chidi laughed, a deep, confident laugh that drew attention from nearby guests. "And what's the price?" 100 million naira, Emeka said. "To the winner. But here's the condition. You have to stay married to her for 6 months. No divorce. No separation. 6 full months. 100 million naira. It was nothing to Chidi. He could make that in a single business deal. But it wasn't about the money. It never was. It was about winning. It was about proving, once again, that Chidi Okonkwo was untouchable. "And who is this woman you have in mind?" Chidi asked, already feeling the familiar rush of competition flowing through his veins. Emeka's smile widened. "Her name is Amara Nwosu." Amara Nwosu. In another life, in another story, she might have been just an ordinary woman. But there was nothing ordinary about Amara. Not her strength. Not her resilience. Not the fire that burned behind her calm exterior. At 28 years old, Amara had experienced more pain than most people experience in a lifetime. She had known wealth once, when she was a child. Her father, Amara Nwosu, had owned a small but thriving company. They weren't rich like the Okonkwos of the world, but they were comfortable. They were happy. And then Chidi Okonkwo came along. Amara was only 19 when it happened. Too young to understand the complexities of business. Too young to know that behind every corporate takeover, there were families being destroyed. All she knew was that one day, her father came home with tears in his eyes. Something Amara had never seen before. Her father, the strongest man she knew, was crying. "It's over," he had whispered. "We've lost everything. The company. The house. The cars. Everything they had built over decades, gone in an instant. Crushed by a man who didn't even bother to learn their names. A man who saw their family's livelihood as nothing more than a number on a spreadsheet. Chidi Okonkwo. The stress of losing everything became too much for Obiora. The shame. The debt. The inability to provide for his family. It consumed him. It ate away at his spirit until there was nothing left. 3 months after losing the company, Amara's father took his own life. The memory of that day was burned into Amara's mind. The sound of her mother's screams. The weight of her father's lifeless body in her arms. The absolute, devastating emptiness that followed. But Amara didn't break. She couldn't afford to break. With her mother drowning in depression and debt collectors knocking at their door, Amara had to become the strong one. She worked 3 jobs to keep them afloat. She sold what little they had left. She fought, clawed, and survived. And through it all, she never forgot the name of the man who had destroyed them. Chidi Okonkwo. Years passed. Amara rebuilt her life piece by piece. She was no longer the broken girl who had lost everything. She was a woman now. A woman with purpose. A woman with a plan. When she first heard about the bet, she felt something she hadn't felt in years. Hope. Not hope for love. Not hope for happiness. But hope for justice. Hope for revenge. Through connections she had carefully cultivated over the years, Amara had positioned herself to be the woman Emeka would suggest for the bet. It wasn't coincidence. It was strategy. Every move she had made for the past 2 years had led to this moment. She would marry Chidi Okonkwo. She would make him trust her. She would make him feel what it was like to be powerless, to be destroyed, to have everything you love taken away. And when she was done, she would walk away and leave him in ruins. Just like he had done to her family. Their first meeting took place at an upscale restaurant in Victoria Island. The kind of place where a single meal cost more than most people earned in a month. Chidi arrived first, as he always did. He liked to observe. To assess. To maintain control. He chose a table with a perfect view of the entrance and waited. When Amara walked in, Chidi felt something he wasn't expecting. She wasn't what he had imagined. There was nothing flashy about her. No designer dress. No expensive jewelry. She wore a simple but elegant outfit, her natural hair pulled back in a way that framed her face beautifully. She walked with confidence, not the desperate kind of confidence he was used to seeing in women who wanted to impress him. This was different. This was real. Amara spotted him immediately. Their eyes met across the room, and for a moment, the world seemed to stop. He doesn't recognize me, she thought as she approached. Why would he? To him, my family was nothing. Just another company to destroy. Just another life to crush. You must be Chidi Okonkwo, Amara said as she reached the table. Her voice was steady. Controlled. She would not let him see anything but what she wanted him to see. Chidi stood, extending his hand. And you must be Amara Nwosu. She hesitated for just a second before shaking his hand. His grip was firm. Confident. The grip of a man who had never known defeat. But you will, Amara thought. You will know defeat. I will make sure of it. They sat across from each other, a battlefield disguised as a dinner table. Let me be direct with you, Amara began, her eyes meeting his without flinching. I know about the bet. I know the terms. I know the conditions. Chidi was surprised by her bluntness, but he didn't show it. He leaned back in his chair, studying her with new interest. And yet you agreed to meet me. Why? Amara's lips curved into a slight smile. Let's just say I have my own reasons. I'm not naive, Chidi. 6 months may seem like a short time, but a lot can change in 6 months. If you think you can manipulate me or control me during that time, you're mistaken. Something stirred in Chidi's chest. He had expected a simple girl who would be overwhelmed by his presence. Instead, he found himself facing a woman who seemed completely unfazed by him. This was going to be interesting. The wedding was cold. Calculated. A transaction disguised as a ceremony. They exchanged vows in a quiet courthouse, with only Emeka as a witness. There were no flowers. No music. No tears of joy. Just signatures on paper and 2 people bound together by a bet that meant everything to one and nothing to the other. Or so Chidi thought. After the ceremony, Chidi took Amara to his penthouse in Ikoyi. The apartment was a masterpiece of modern architecture. Floor-to-ceiling windows overlooked the Lagos Lagoon. Every piece of furniture was imported. Every artwork was priceless. Chidi expected Amara to be impressed. Every woman he had ever brought here had been mesmerized by the luxury. But Amara walked through the space with complete indifference. She didn't gasp at the view. She didn't run her fingers over the expensive fabrics. She simply looked around, nodded, and turned to face him. 6 months, Chidi. Not a day more. Chidi smiled. The kind of smile that said he was already planning his victory. We'll see about that. The first weeks of their marriage were a battle of wills. Chidi tried everything to win Amara over. He bought her jewelry worth millions. She left them unopened in their boxes. He arranged surprise trips to exclusive resorts. She politely declined every invitation. He showered her with designer clothes. She continued wearing her simple, modest outfits. Nothing worked. Chidi, who had never been refused anything in his life, found himself growing increasingly frustrated. This woman was unlike anyone he had ever encountered. She didn't want his money. She didn't crave his attention. She seemed completely content in her own world, a world he couldn't enter no matter how hard he tried. Why won't you accept anything from me? Chidi demanded one evening, his frustration finally boiling over. Amara looked up from the book she was reading, her expression calm. Because I don't need anything from you, Chidi. I told you from the beginning. I'm not interested in your money or your lifestyle. I have my own life, and that won't change just because we're temporarily married. The word temporarily stung more than Chidi expected. You're infuriating, he said, running his hand through his hair. And you're predictable, Amara replied, returning to her book. Chidi stood there, speechless. No one had ever spoken to him like this. No one had ever made him feel so powerless. As the weeks passed, Chidi found himself becoming obsessed with understanding Amara. He stopped focusing on winning the bet and started focusing on winning her. He wanted to know her secrets. He wanted to know what made her so different. He wanted, desperately, to break through the walls she had built around herself. But every time he got close, she pulled away. One night, after a particularly tense dinner, Chidi found Amara standing on the balcony, looking out at the city lights. What are you thinking about? He asked, approaching her carefully. Amara was quiet for a long moment before answering. I'm thinking about how beautiful the city looks from up here. How peaceful everything seems. But down there, in those streets, there are people suffering. People who lost everything. People whose lives were destroyed by men like you. Chidi felt a chill run down his spine. Men like me. Amara turned to face him, and for the first time, he saw something dangerous in her eyes. Yes, Chidi. Men like you. Men who build empires on the broken backs of others. Men who take and never stop to consider the damage they leave behind. I don't know what you're talking about, Chidi said, but even as the words left his mouth, he knew they were hollow. Amara smiled, but it wasn't a warm smile. It was the kind of smile that promised pain. You will, Chidi. Soon, you will. Things began to change in ways Chidi never anticipated. At work, his deals started falling apart. Contracts he had been confident about suddenly went to competitors. Important meetings were cancelled at the last minute. Projects he had invested millions in began to fail. At first, Chidi thought it was coincidence. Bad luck. But as the failures mounted, he started to notice a pattern. Every setback could be traced back to a single source. Amara. She was doing this. He didn't know how, but he knew it was her. The woman who seemed so uninvolved, so detached, was somehow pulling strings he couldn't see. What are you doing? Chidi confronted her one evening, his voice shaking with a mixture of anger and fear. You're sabotaging me, aren't you? Amara looked at him with those calm, unreadable eyes. I don't know what you're talking about. Don't lie to me. Chidi shouted, losing control for the first time. I know it's you. I know you're behind everything that's happening. Amara stood up slowly, and even though she was shorter than him, in that moment, she seemed to tower over him. You want the truth, Chidi? Fine. I'll give you the truth. She took a step closer, her eyes blazing with an intensity that made him step back. Do you remember the name Nwosu? Do you remember a small company you destroyed 9 years ago? A company owned by a man named Amara Nwosu. Chidi's blood ran cold. He had destroyed so many companies over the years. So many lives. He couldn't remember them all. But as he looked into Amara's eyes, fragments of memory began to surface. That was my father, Amara said, her voice breaking for the first time. You destroyed his company. You took everything we had. And the weight of that destruction, it killed him. My father took his own life because of what you did. Chidi felt like the ground had disappeared beneath his feet. The room was spinning. He couldn't breathe. Amara. He started, but she raised her hand, silencing him. I'm not finished. Tears were streaming down her face now, but her voice remained strong. When everything fell apart, when we lost everything, I was in a terrible state. The stress, the pain, the fear, it was too much. And She paused, struggling to get the words out. I was pregnant, Chidi. And I lost the baby. The weight of our words crushed him. I lost my father. I lost my child. I lost everything because of your greed. And you went on with your life as if nothing had happened. As if we didn't exist. As if our lives meant nothing. Chidi collapsed onto the couch, his head in his hands. This couldn't be happening. He had done terrible things in his pursuit of success, but this was beyond anything he had imagined. So yes, Amara continued, her voice cold now. I came into this marriage with a plan. I wanted you to feel what I felt. I wanted you to know what it's like to lose everything. I wanted you to suffer. The days that followed were the darkest of Chidi's life. Amara's words haunted him. He couldn't sleep. He couldn't eat. Every time he closed his eyes, he saw the faces of the people he had destroyed. Not just Amara's family, but all of them. All the lives he had ruined in his quest for power. For the first time in his life, Chidi Okonkwo felt genuine remorse. He tried to talk to Amara, to apologize, to explain. But she wouldn't listen. She treated him like he was invisible. She walked past him as if he didn't exist. Her silence was more painful than any words could have been. But something unexpected began to happen within Chidi. The guilt that had consumed him started to transform into something else. Purpose. For the first time in his life, he didn't want to win. He didn't want to conquer. He wanted to change. It started with small gestures. Chidi noticed that Amara liked a specific type of flower, purple orchids. The same flowers her father used to bring home every Friday. She had mentioned it once, in passing, not thinking Chidi was listening. But he was. He was always listening now. One morning, Amara woke up to find a bouquet of purple orchids on the kitchen table. No note. No explanation. Just flowers. She didn't say anything, but Chidi saw her pause. He saw her touch the petals gently, a distant look in her eyes. It wasn't forgiveness. It wasn't even acknowledgement. But it was something. He noticed other things too. The way she liked her tea, with just a touch of honey. The books she preferred to read. The way she always wrapped herself in a blanket when she sat on the balcony at night. Chidi started showing up with her tea prepared exactly the way she liked it. He left books he thought she might enjoy on her nightstand. He made sure there was always a warm blanket waiting for her on the balcony. He didn't ask for anything in return. He didn't expect forgiveness. He just wanted her to know that he was paying attention. That he was trying. Why are you doing this? The question came one evening, after weeks of silent gestures and careful attention. Amara was standing in the kitchen, looking at yet another bouquet of purple orchids. Chidi was standing in the doorway, watching her. Because I realized that words mean nothing. I've spent my whole life using words to manipulate, to control, to get what I want. But with you, Amara, words are useless. The only thing I can do is show you. Show me what? That I'm changing. That I'm trying to become a man worthy of your forgiveness. Not because I expect you to forgive me, but because. He paused, searching for the right words. Because you made me see myself clearly for the first time. And I hated what I saw. Amara was quiet for a long moment. When she finally spoke, her voice was softer than he had ever heard it. You can't change the past, Chidi. I know, he replied. But I can change the future. And that's what I'm trying to do. Chidi didn't stop at gestures within their home. He began reaching out to the families he had destroyed over the years. It wasn't easy. Many of them refused to see him. Many of them cursed his name and slammed doors in his face. But Chidi persisted. He tracked down former employees who had lost their jobs because of his hostile takeovers. He found small business owners who had been crushed by his corporate machinery. He sought out every person he could find whose life had been damaged by his greed. And to each of them, he offered the same thing, an apology and a promise to help. He set up a foundation to support small businesses. He created scholarship programs for children of families affected by his past actions. He donated millions to organizations that helped people rebuild their lives. It wasn't enough. He knew it would never be enough. But it was a start. Amara watched all of this from a distance. She didn't say anything, but Chidi could see that something was shifting in her eyes. The hatred that had been there from the beginning was slowly being replaced by something else. Something that looked almost like respect. One evening, Chidi came home from visiting a family he had hurt years ago. He was emotionally drained, but there was also a strange sense of peace inside him that he had never felt before. Amara was waiting for him in the living room. How did it go? She asked. Chidi was surprised by the question. It was the first time she had shown any interest in his reconciliation efforts. It was difficult, he admitted, sitting down across from her. The man lost his wife because of the stress I caused. She had a heart attack when they lost everything. He has every right to hate me forever. But he listened. He didn't forgive me, and I don't expect him to. But he listened. And he accepted my help to rebuild his business. Chidi looked at Amara, his eyes filled with a vulnerability she had never seen before. I can't undo what I did. I can't bring back the people who were lost. But maybe I can help the ones who are still here. Maybe that counts for something. Amara was quiet for a long moment. Then, slowly, she nodded. It counts for something, Chidi. It's not forgiveness, but it's something. As the 6-month deadline approached, something unexpected was happening between them. The walls that Amara had built were crumbling. Not because Chidi had forced them down, but because he had stopped trying to force anything. He had simply shown up, day after day, proving through his action that he was becoming a different man. They started having real conversations. Not arguments. Not code exchanges. But genuine discussions about life, about dreams, about fears. Chidi learned that Amara had always wanted to open a school for underprivileged children. She wanted to give opportunities to kids who, like her, had lost everything but still had the potential to achieve great things. Why haven't you done it? Chidi asked one evening. Amara shrugged. I never had the resources. And after everything that happened, I focused all my energy on survival. On revenge. She paused, looking at him with a new openness. But lately, I've been thinking that maybe revenge isn't what I want anymore. Chidi reached across the table and, for the first time, took her hand. She didn't pull away. Let me help you, he said. Let me help you build that school. The school project became their shared mission. They worked together to find the perfect location, a building in a neighborhood where many families had been affected by Chidi's past business dealings. They designed the curriculum together, combining Amara's vision with Chidi's resources. For the first time, they were partners. Not adversaries. Not strangers. Partners. And somewhere in the middle of all that work, all those late nights planning and dreaming together, something else began to grow. Love. It didn't arrive with fireworks or dramatic declarations. It crept in quietly, like the sunrise after a long, dark night. It showed up in the small moments, the way Chidi's hand lingered on Amara's shoulder, the way Amara smiled when she caught him watching her, the way they both felt empty when they were apart. The 6 months ended on a quiet Tuesday. Chidi found Amara in the living room, looking out at the city. The same city they had both loved and hated. The same city that had brought them together in the most unlikely way. It's over, Amara said softly. The 6 months. The bet. Chidi nodded, his heart pounding. Yes. It is. So what happens now? Chidi took a deep breath. This was the moment he had been dreading and hoping for at the same time. What happens now, he said, moving closer to her, is that I tell you the truth. The complete truth. Amara turned to face him, waiting. I fell in love with you, Amara. Not because of the bet. Not because of any game. I fell in love with you because you showed me who I really was, and then you gave me the chance to become someone better. Tears welled up in Amara's eyes, but she didn't speak. I know I don't deserve your forgiveness, Chidi continued. I know I can never undo the pain I caused you and your family. But if you give me the chance, I will spend the rest of my life trying to make it right. Not because I have to, but because I want to. Because I love you. A tear rolled down Amara's cheek. Chidi. You don't have to answer now, he said quickly. You don't have to answer ever, if you don't want to. But I needed you to know. I needed you to know that this, what we have now, is real. It's the most real thing I've ever felt in my life. Amara was silent for what felt like an eternity. Chidi stood there, his heart exposed, waiting for whatever judgment she would deliver. Finally, she spoke. My father used to tell me something when I was a little girl. He used to say that the measure of a person is not in the mistakes they make, but in how they respond to those mistakes. He believed in second chances. In redemption. She stepped closer to Chidi, close enough that he could see the tears glistening on her cheeks. For a long time, I hated you. I wanted to destroy you the way you destroyed us. But somewhere along the way, I started seeing something different. I started seeing a man who was truly trying to change. A man who was willing to face the ugliest parts of himself and still fight to become better. She reached up and touched his face, her hand warm against his cheek. I'm not saying the past is erased. I'm not saying I've completely forgiven you. But I am saying that I believe in you now. I believe in who you're becoming. And I think I've fallen in love with that person. Chidi let out a breath he didn't know he'd been holding. He pulled her into his arms, holding her like she was the most precious thing in the world. Because to him, she was. I love you, Amara. I will spend every day proving that to you. I know you will, she whispered against his chest. I know. Three months later, they stood at the altar once more. But this time, everything was different. The church was filled with people who loved them. The families Chidi had hurt had been invited, and many of them came. Not because they had fully forgiven him, but because they had seen his transformation and wanted to witness this new chapter. Amara wore a simple white dress, her natural beauty radiant as she walked down the aisle. In her hands, she carried a bouquet of purple orchids, a tribute to her father. Chidi watched her approach, tears streaming down his face. He had never cried in public before. He had always considered it a weakness. But standing there, watching the woman who had changed his life walk toward him, he didn't care who saw. Their vows were not the cold, transactional words they had spoken 6 months earlier. These were promises from the heart. I vow to honor your father's memory, Chidi said, his voice thick with emotion. I vow to spend my life making up for the pain I caused. I vow to love you, to cherish you, to stand by you, until my last breath. Amara smiled through her tears. I vow to continue believing in you. I vow to walk this journey of healing with you. I vow to love you, not despite our painful past, but because of how we've grown through it. When they kissed, the church erupted in applause. But for Chidi and Amara, it was as if they were the only two people in the world. 6 months after their second wedding, Amara shared news that made Chidi fall to his knees. She was pregnant. The moment she told him, Chidi broke down completely. This was a second chance he never thought he would have. After everything, after all the pain and destruction, life was giving them a gift. He held Amara close, sobbing into her shoulder. I'm going to be a father. We are going to be parents. Amara nodded, tears of joy streaming down her face. Yes, we are. And this child is going to know nothing but love. The school they had built together opened that same year. They named it Amara Nwosu Academy, in honor of Amara's father. On opening day, Chidi stood before a crowd of children, parents, and community members. He looked at Amara, who stood beside him, her hand resting on her growing belly. This school is more than just a building, Chidi said, his voice carrying across the crowd. It's a promise. A promise that no matter how dark things get, there is always hope. There is always a chance to rebuild. There is always a chance to start again. He turned to look at Amara, his eyes full of love. I know this because I lived it. I was given a second chance by a woman who had every reason to hate me. And through her love, through her patience, through her belief in something I couldn't even see in myself, I became a new man. This school exists because of her. This future exists because of her. Amara wiped away a tear as the crowd applauded. Their daughter was born on a beautiful morning in April. They named her Adiz, meaning daughter of a king. But to Chidi, she was so much more than that. She was proof that even the most broken things could be made new. She was hope embodied. As he held his daughter in his arms for the first time, Chidi made a silent promise. I will never be the man I was. I will be the father you deserve. I will be the husband your mother deserves. I will spend every day earning this second chance. Amara watched them from the hospital bed, exhausted but radiant. She has your eyes, she said softly. Chidi smiled, tears streaming down his face. And your strength. God help anyone who underestimates her. They laughed together, a sound of pure joy. Years passed. Amara Nwosu Academy grew into one of the most respected schools in the country. Hundreds of children who might have been forgotten were given opportunities to learn, to grow, to dream. Chidi's foundation expanded, helping thousands of families rebuild their lives. He became known not as the ruthless businessman who destroyed people, but as the man who spent his second chance trying to heal the wounds he had caused. And through it all, Amara was by his side. Their love, born from pain and nurtured through forgiveness, became an example to everyone who knew them. They proved that redemption was possible. That people could change. That love, true love, could survive even the darkest storms. One evening, years later, Chidi and Amara sat on the balcony of their home, watching their daughter play in the garden below. The sun was setting, painting the sky in shades of orange and gold. Do you ever think about how it all started? Amara asked, leaning her head on his shoulder. Chidi nodded. All the time. I think about the bet. I think about how arrogant I was. I think about how close I came to losing everything that truly matters. He turned to look at her, his eyes filled with a love that had only grown deeper with time. Thank you, Amara. Thank you for not giving up on me. Thank you for seeing something in me that I couldn't see in myself. Amara smiled, that same mysterious smile she had given him all those years ago. Thank you for proving me right. Thank you for becoming the man I always hoped you could be. They sat in comfortable silence, watching their daughter laugh and play. Who would have thought, Chidi said softly, that a foolish bet would lead to this? Amara chuckled. The best bet you ever made. He pulled her closer, pressing a kiss to her forehead. The best bet I ever made, he agreed. And so, what began as a cruel game became something beautiful. What started with revenge ended with redemption. What was built on destruction was rebuilt with love. Chidi and Amara's story is proof that no one is beyond saving. That change is possible for anyone willing to face their demons. That love, when it's real, can heal even the deepest wounds. Their journey wasn't easy. There were setbacks. There were moments of doubt. There were nights when the past threatened to swallow them whole. But they held on. They fought for each other. They chose love, again and again, even when it was hard. And in the end, that choice made all the difference.